Hello everyone, welcome to the KZGN News. Today we bring you news of voter fraud in California, news of the City Council meeting Wednesday, Clinton continues her attack on the Second Amendment, California continues their attack on the Second Amendment, today's KZGN Talking Points editorial, weather, sports, and much more.
From the Rademacher Hills to Bee Mountain and the mighty Sierras, Ridgecrest to Inyokern and China Lake, this is your news for the Indian Wells Valley with the KZGN News Crew.
Hello, I'm Tom Whitnick. Thanks for joining us for the news affecting Ridgecrest and the Indian Wells Valley. As we all voted today, at least I hope everyone got out and voted, we continue to get news of illegal voting in California. An investigation by CBS LA2 and KCAL9 found that hundreds of deceased persons are still on voter registration rolls, and that many of these names have been voting for years in Los Angeles. Julita Abotin died in 2006, but voted in 2008, 10, 12, and 14. According to CBS, the county confirmed they have signed vote-by-mail envelopes from Abotin since she passed away. So either someone has been forging her signature, or her ghost has a quite earthly presence. The investigation revealed that 265 deceased persons voted in Southern California, 215 of them in Los Angeles County. 32 were repeat voters, with 8 posthumously casting ballots each. One woman who died in 1988 has been voting for 26 years, including the 2014 election. This report comes 20 years after the contested election of Loretta Sanchez, Democrat from California, from the same area. An investigation by a U.S. House committee found that hundreds of illegal ballots were cast by non-citizens and improper absentee ballots. In that 1996 election, when she defeated incumbent Bob Dornan, a winning margin of 979 votes was whittled down to only 35 votes or fewer when that fraud vote was factored in. In cases like these, where elections are decided by only a small number of votes, the harmful effects of voter fraud is obvious. Yet 20 years later, California has still not taken the necessary steps to ensure the reliability of its electoral system. As a result of the investigation, Los Angeles County supervisors called for an investigation into the findings. Cases like these and many others show that voter fraud is real and a potential threat to the integrity of the election process. The Los Angeles County Registrar pointed to the 1,200 to 2,000 voter registrations removed every month to update records and told reporters, "There's really no way to connect a person whose death is recorded with a person who is registered to vote unless we get some kind of notification from the family." But that is plain nonsense, according to CBS. Other states do frequent comparisons between their voter registration lists and the death databases maintained by the Social Security Administration. The CBS investigation shows both that voter fraud exists and that this type of fraudulent voting is detectable through proper investigation. CBS reports that California is the only state that does not comply with the Help America Vote Act of 2002, something the Obama administration has basically ignored. The Help America Vote Act establishes mandatory minimum standards of accuracy for state voter registration lists and requires states to engage in regular maintenance and updates to remove ineligible voters who die or move away. So, we'll see how today's voting goes. It would be encouraging for our state registrars to get their registration rolls better maintained. In city news, the Ridgecrest City Council will begin taking up the 2016-17 budget tomorrow, Wednesday. A special meeting of the Ridgecrest City Council is called to be held on Wednesday, June 8th. It will be held at 5 p.m. in the council chambers. Note the time is 5 p.m. versus the usual 6 p.m. The special meeting shall be for the purpose of presentation of an introductory overview of the draft preliminary budget for fiscal year 2016-17 and the opening of budget hearing discussions. The budget will now have to move through the approval process pretty quick, as state law requires the council to approve a balanced budget by July 1st. So we'll probably see more special meetings. If you want to provide input on the city's budget, this is the time to do so. Now, news the Second Amendment is under attack like never seen before in California. As we report this story, the California legislature is considering final approval of 5 anti-gun bills. None of these bills would do anything to fight crime or take guns out of the hands of people that shouldn't have them. It's time to start calling Governor Brown's office. Call there and declare that these laws are not going to do anything to stop crime. By passing prohibitions that ban items that are currently legal to own, it will make millions of current legal gun owners criminals. These are terrible new laws. If you agree, help spread the word to your friends and family. Start calling the governor now to voice your concerns about these new proposed laws. Encourage him to veto them. You can call his office at 916-445-2841. Or you can email him if you just go to www.govnews.ca.gov. There's a simple form to fill out and send to him. I've done it online. It's easy. Don't be silent. Act now. In election news, the AP is reporting that Clinton has locked up the Democratic nomination. With the superdelegates, she has reached the minimum needed. However, Sanders is still looking for a win in California to change some of those superdelegates. One thing I find very interesting about this report is the timing. With Sanders and Clinton polling in a dead heat in California, it seems very suspicious that the AP would come out with this determination on the Monday before we vote. Could they possibly be trying to influence the voters in California? Is this another effect of the Clinton political machine to put a nail in Sanders' bid for the nomination? Oftentimes people just vote for who they think the winner is. I don't know for sure, but the timing seems intentional to me. It could very well influence the Democratic election here in California. In other news about Clinton, seems even the liberal media is getting upset with Clinton not doing any unscripted press conferences. Clinton has not opened herself up to open questions since last December. The media even compliments Trump for being open to many press conferences and taking any questions. Trump never scripts an interview. In case you don't know it yet, every time you see Clinton being interviewed on TV, that interview has been prearranged. All the questions have been provided to her before the interview. She approves what can and cannot be asked. So if anyone out there feels you are getting to see a better side of Clinton through these interviews, know that everything you have seen for the last 8 months has been completely staged. And it is also interesting that she has still not accepted any interviews on Fox News. She has avoided Fox on every turn. If you're on the fence on who you will vote for, you have to ask yourself, why won't Clinton agree to an unscripted news conference or agree to an interview on Fox News? What questions does she fear to control the campaign so tightly? The other night, ABC's George Stephanopoulos asked Clinton a question on gun control. He point-blank asked her if she agreed if owning a firearm was an individual right. Her answer? She answered a different question.
Let's talk about the Second Amendment. As you know, Donald Trump has also been out on the stump talking about the Second Amendment, saying you want to abolish the Second Amendment. I know you reject that, but I want to ask you a specific question. Do you believe that an individual's right to bear arms is a constitutional right, that it's not linked to service in a militia?
I think that for most of our history, there was a nuanced reading of the Second Amendment until the decision by the late Justice Scalia. And there was no argument until then that localities and states and the federal government had a right, as we do with every amendment, to impose reasonable regulations. So I believe we can have common sense gun safety measures consistent with the Second Amendment. And in fact, what I have proposed is supported by 90% of the American people and more than 75% of responsible gun owners. So that is exactly what I think is constitutionally permissible. And once again, you have Donald Trump just making outright fabrications, accusing me of something that is absolutely untrue. But I'm going to continue to speak out for comprehensive background checks, closing the gun show loophole, closing the online loophole, closing the so-called Charleston loophole, reversing the bill that Senator Sanders voted for and I voted against, giving immunity from liability to gun makers and sellers. I think all of that can and should be done, and it is, in my view, consistent with the Constitution.
And the Heller decision also does say there can be some restrictions, but that's not what I asked. I said, do you believe that their conclusion that an individual's right to bear arms is a constitutional right?
If it is a constitutional right, then it, like every other constitutional right, is subject to reasonable regulations. And what people have done with that decision is to take it as far as they possibly can and reject what has been our history from the very beginning of the Republic, where some of the earliest laws that were passed were about firearms. So I think it's important to recognize that reasonable people can say, as I do, responsible gun owners have a right. I have no objection to that. But the rest of the American public has a right to require certain kinds of regulatory, responsible actions to protect everyone else.
So, as you can see, she will not agree that the right to own a firearm is an individual right. The Supreme Court has made the decision that it is an individual right. And in campaign speeches, she has said the Supreme Court got it wrong and needs to reconsider that decision. So don't be fooled. The Second Amendment is under full attack by Clinton and California. Now it's time for the 149th KZGN News Talking Points editorial. Here's today's topic. Who is behind the voter fraud problems many states, including California, experience on election days? Okay, so as I reported earlier, CBS 2 News has found concrete evidence of voter fraud in Los Angeles. And there have been other investigations around the state, as well as around the country, that there is evidence of illegal voting going on. Estimates states illegal voting could be in the hundreds of thousands across the country. In California, there are estimates of over 100,000 illegal votes every election statewide. The investigations show that most of these illegal votes are done by mail-in ballots. Of course, that is a safe way to do it. There are examples that close elections have been changed by the illegal votes. The state elections code declares that they are purging registrations all the time. And they believe the amount of fraud to be so small as they would not affect any elections. This is unacceptable as far as I'm concerned. What about small local elections? I've seen elections here in Ridgecrest decided by less than 7 votes on a few elections. So what if there were just 7 illegal mail-in votes here? What if one very opinionated group decided to keep voting for a certain cause or candidate? What if they were able to register their dogs? And there are examples of dogs being registered. What if they don't report the death of a family member? What if they get their deceased family member's mail-in ballot in the mail, and they decide, what the heck, let's use it to vote? Can this make a difference? Of course. Should it be stopped? Of course. Do the election officials care? Most do, but not all. Our elections people are responsible to make sure only legal votes are accepted. And then I take it to another level. Could there be a political agenda in the illegal voter fraud? What is strange in the results of voter fraud investigations across the country is that the majority of the fraud cases are in liberal-leaning electorates. Now, I didn't say all, but a majority. There are even reports that some jurisdictions have more registered voters than they have in population of people eligible to vote. We all know that has to be a serious problem, since usually only about 65% of eligible voters even register at all. In the hotly contested election in Florida, where Bush ultimately won the presidency, there were over 100,000 illegal votes. So is there any group behind these fraudulent registrations? Does anyone remember Acorn during the Obama elections? A liberal group that was found to have registered thousands of voters to help Obama get elected. Of course, these same votes could be used to support other liberal candidates and initiatives. So why don't the election departments fix the problem? Well, I'd like to not think that they are only doing this on a political basis, but it does seem weird that the most fraud is primarily Democrat-held states and districts. Now, I didn't say all of it was Democrat districts, but it is a majority, about 75%. Is this a function of the electorate in those areas conspiring to impact an election? These problems reinforce the need for measures such as voter ID laws and procedures designed to verify the accuracy of voter registrations. Take East Chicago, Indiana, for example, a town made infamous by the extensive voter fraud that occurred there in 2003 Democratic mayoral primary election. The fraud was so pervasive that the Indiana Supreme Court overturned the results of the primary and ordered a new special election that resulted in a different winner. In Knott County, Kentucky, the chief executive of that county, Donnie Newsom, and co-conspirator Willard Smith were convicted on federal charges for organizing a conspiracy to pay several impoverished, handicapped, illiterate, or otherwise impaired persons to vote for Newsom and others by absentee ballot in a Democratic primary election. Newsom was sentenced to 26 months in prison. Smith got a 24-month sentence. Later, another consecutive Knott County judge executive was sent to federal prison on voter fraud charges too. A jury convicted Thompson and 3 co-conspirators of vote-buying scheme. In 2012, a city council election, originally decided by 4 votes in Vernon, California, was overturned when it was determined that 5 people who voted for the winner were not residents of the city, and 2 others had not properly mailed in their ballots. A new winner was subsequently named. Anyway, there are also examples in Republican-held districts. Many people that want to fix the problem are pushing for voter ID requirements, that people that vote should show an ID to verify their right to vote. They argue that you need to have an ID to buy certain goods like cigarettes and alcohol, to get on a plane, to cash a check, to do any transaction in a bank, to get credit, to buy a gun, to even drive a car. So why not a voter ID? But the other areas of the problem seem to be in states that are issuing driver's licenses to illegal aliens. There seems to be more voter fraud in many of those states. And guess what? California just recently started issuing these driver's licenses. And they also can register to vote when getting their driver's licenses. There are also cases of large groups of convicted felons registering and voting. Current law restricts these criminals of voting. The Obama administration is trying to change that before he leaves office. Some predict that he will issue an executive order soon, changing the law on convicted felons and voting. It is predicted he'll do this in time to help the Democrats in November presidential election. And politically, it seems the Democrats don't really see it as a problem, while Republicans do. In conclusion, voter fraud is wrong. State and county election offices need to do more to stop this problem. Elections officials should purge their registration rolls better. There are elections decided by a few votes sometimes. An election won with fraudulent votes just corrupts the system. I'm Tom Whitnick, and that's what I think. I'd like to know what you think. If you have any comments about this editorial, or would like to discuss or recommend a topic, I'd like to hear from you. Please email them to info@kzgn.net. Thanks for staying with us. Here's Lane with the weather.
Thank you, Tom. The National Hurricane Center continues to monitor Tropical Storm Colin. Colin will proceed through the southeast U.S. early Tuesday, bringing heavy rain, strong winds, coastal flooding, and isolated tornadoes to portions of the southeast. Tropical storm warnings are in effect. Temperatures across the nation. Carolinas at 72, Georgia at 88, Arkansas at 90, Northern Texas at 84, Arizona at 96, and Los Angeles at 63. And for us locally, tonight, mostly clear with a low around 75, west-southwest wind 5 to 15 miles per hour. Wednesday, sunny with a high near 108, southwest wind 5 miles per hour. Wednesday night, mostly clear with a low around 73, south wind 15 miles per hour. Thursday, sunny with a high near 104, south wind 10 miles per hour. Thursday night, mostly clear with a low around 71, southwest wind 10 to 15 miles per hour with gusts as high as 25. Friday, sunny with a high near 99, south wind 10 miles per hour with gusts as high as 15. Friday night, mostly clear with a low around 67, west-southwest wind 15 miles per hour with gusts as high as 25. And Saturday, sunny with a high near 94, south-southwest wind 10 to 15 miles per hour. And that is your forecast for the IWV. Now back to Tom.
So that's the news for today. All of the KZGN-TV know you have a choice in what you watch for your news. We all thank you for choosing KZGN-TV, Ridgecrest's only locally owned community TV station. Now stay tuned for Ridgecrest Talk coming up next.